السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله صلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. The last hadith that we looked at is the hadith of Abu Dharr, isn't it? تلك عاجل بشرى المؤمن. Isn't that the last hadith that we looked at? And that leaves us with 4 more hadith, inshallah ta'ala. The first being hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhuma. Who can remind us what we've said about him before? Kind of. In write, he used to write. Yeah, he used to write a hadith. That's why Abu Hurairah used to say that he's the biggest narrator of hadith. But in terms of hadith that have reached us, it's Abu Hurairah's hadith that are more than Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, and that shows that hadith were written from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, not as some people think, much later on. He says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رضا الله في رضا الوالدين وسخط الله في سخط الوالدين أخرجه الترمذي وصححه ابن حبان والحاكم. This hadith is a great hadith, and it's a principle which is supported by many other verses and hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and it makes the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala with us proportional to how happy our parents are with us. The more content and pleased our parents are with us, that's a direct sign of Allah Ta'ala being pleased with us. And we've said many times before that every person is responsible for themselves. We're not responsible for whether people respond the way we want them to or the way they should or not. We're responsible for our actions. So whether we think our parents are being fair to us or unfair to us, or nice to us or not nice to us, or they're trying to cut us off or not, we still have the same responsibility. It doesn't change. And I've mentioned this hadith many times on the minbar and in this class and elsewhere. The hadith narrated by Bukhari in his Sahih, the Prophet ﷺ said, ليس الواصل بالمكافر. ليس الواصل بالمكافر. The one who keeps family ties isn't the one who does so as a return. Mukafa'a. Okay, like for like. You treat me well, I treat you back well. He said that's not keeping family ties, because anyone can do that. He said, الواصل الذي إذا قطعت رحمه وصلها. The one who keeps family ties as Allah commanded is the one who is cut off by his family and still keeps good family ties with them. And therefore, the excuse that we make to ourselves a lot of the time and to other people, okay, what if they are disrespectful? What if they're not good people? Okay, what if they don't treat me well? Yes, this is exactly what this hadith is talking about. And also, our parents, were they not patient with our difficulty as well throughout our lives? So, هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان? Isn't the least that we can do is return the favor? If we're going to be stingy, we have a right to return the favor at least. At the very least. And if our parents, on top of taking care of us as human beings, took care of us to keep us on the path of Islam and Iman, they have a right that can't be matched. They can't be, whatever we do, we can't replace that. Imagine we grow up, we become rich. You buy your parents a house, you buy them a car, you buy them a business, you buy whatever, pay off all their debts. Is that greater than Iman? Is that greater than teaching you how to pray Salah? Is that greater than teaching us how to recite al-Fettah? It's not. So, as well as the dunyawi care that we've been taken care of by our parents. For most of us, okay, maybe not everyone, but for most of us, it's our parents that allowed us to begin this path of righteousness and iman. So that can't be replaced ever, and therefore it requires extra patience, especially in this individualistic society of today. Everyone goes their own way. Regardless, you can find in this society a son who's rich and parents who are poor. That should never happen. If people were half decent, that should never happen. So it's not a coincidence that Allah Ta'ala emphasizes this issue. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. The most important commandment throughout the history of mankind, Allah has decreed that you worship none other than Him. And immediately after He said وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and that you treat your parents good, you treat them well, with excellence, with ihsan. That's a huge sign of the great status of this action. So this hadith is one to always be kept in mind. And subhanallah, the dua of parents and the concern of parents is something which maybe without us realizing has kept us alive today and kept us sane and kept us protected from things. So this is something to always be there. Constant making dua for them, constant good treatment, constant patience, even if the relationship is not amazing. Allah controls the hearts. He doesn't require love from us. He doesn't require us to love every single individual. Sometimes a relationship can break down between a son and a father or family members. That can happen. But externally, outwardly, we still have to put that effort in. And if we do put that effort in, most of the time, Allah will also soften hearts. Allah will also soften hearts, inshallah. And if that doesn't happen, that doesn't matter. We still continue doing our bit until Allah Ta'ala decides what He decides. Yeah.
Does that work both ways? So that say you've got a grandparent and a grandson that's cut the grandparent off. Is it upon the grandparent now to keep the family tie as well?
Either way, it's upon every relative to maintain good family relations. That includes parents keeping it with their children, children keeping it with their parents, and so on. But the right of parents is greater than the right of children upon parents. So, sometimes for fear of upsetting people, you might hear some people comparing the right of children to the right of parents. There's no comparison. The right of children is there, yes. Children have rights over their parents, for sure. But is it equal to the right of parents? No, it's not. How do we know it's not? Because the Quran has emphasized one more than it has the other. It's as simple as that. It's a bit similar to when some speakers talk about hijab, the hijab of women. They say men also have hijab. Are they equal? Has the Quran emphasized the hijab of men? Of course, men have to cover their awrah too, for sure. It's also indecent for men to uncover. But are they equal? How do we know whether something's equal or not? How much does the Quran emphasize it? That's it. The more the Quran emphasizes one thing, the more important that thing is. That's it. So there's no harm in talking about things, that are correct and valid for sure, but also put into the right place. So in terms of the right of parents, it is above the right of children. However, parents also have a duty and responsibility to take care of their children and maintain family ties and teach their children to maintain family ties. Because sometimes when we're young and busy with different things and whatever, we forget that. It needs a reminder from parents. And if parents are not doing their job, it's still our duty to do our bit. And if the son is not doing their job, it's still the parents' duty to do their bit as well. And so on. Wallahu a'lam. Hadith narrated by Tirmidhi and authenticated by Ibn Hibban. I think I've mentioned before a few times that the most authentic hadith, generally speaking, is the hadith narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. If they're narrated in both Bukhari and Muslim, then that's the highest level of authenticity generally. Okay? If a hadith is narrated in Muslim but not in al-Bukhari, generally it is also authentic, but usually not at the same level as authenticity. If a hadith is authenticated by Tirmidhi and it's not in al-Bukhari nor Muslim, often that also means it's slightly below in authenticity but still authentic, normally. The next authority in authentication is who? From the famous scholars who authenticate regularly in their books? Ibn Khuzaymah, good. Ibn Khuzaymah. Obviously there are greater authorities than Ibn Khuzaymah, like Abu Dawood and Nasa'i, but they don't really comment on authenticity that much. But Ibn Khuzaymah has a specific book just for authentic hadith. After Ibn Khuzaymah comes Ibn Hibban. Okay, so, and the general rule is what these guys authenticate is authentic as a general rule, but it gets less and less authentic and more questionable as we go down the ladder. So Ibn Hibban, for example, has authenticated quite a few hadith that most of the muhaddithin disagree with. They consider them weak hadith. So that can happen. It happens a bit less with Ibn Khuzaymah, and much less with Tirmidhi, and even much less with Bukhari and Muslim. But it can still happen even with Bukhari and Muslim. Okay, a scholar can weaken a hadith, a muhaddith, an imam in hadith, can weaken a hadith which is narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. And these are very few cases, very few examples, and usually they're not so significant in terms of the content of the hadith and what it talks about. Yeah. Is that a hand? Yeah.
If a parent is upset at a child for the wrong reason, is that still representative of Allah's wrath?
If it's genuinely, and I say genuinely, because sometimes we think it's an unfair reason, if it's genuinely an unfair reason, then we're not held to account for that. A son is not held to account for the unfair displeasure of parents. Take the example of Ibrahim. Was his father happy with him? His father wasn't happy with him. But for sure, his father was in the wrong. For sure, Ibrahim was doing the right thing. So here, whether his father is happy with him or not is insignificant. And the same applies to things in which the parents are clearly wrong. But I emphasize, clearly wrong. Sometimes that means we need to think carefully. Okay, do they have a point, or am I the one being unreasonable? If I'm the one being reasonable, okay, and they are being unreasonable, then here, inshallah, there's no accountability. A parent wants us to do something unreasonable, unjust, haram, okay, cause some other person dhulm, hardship, that type of thing. That's not something. This is why when somebody said to Imam Ahmad, my dad's telling me to divorce my wife, should I divorce her? He said, no, don't divorce her. So that's the way to look at it. That's the way to look at it. Allah Ta'ala. عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثلاث لا يغل عليهن قلب مسلم إخلاص العمل لله ومناصحة ولاة الأمور ولزوم جماعة المسلمين فإن دعوتهم تحيط من ورائهم رواه مسلم. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, when commenting on this hadith, says that what the Prophet ﷺ is trying to say here is that there are three things that help maintain the purity of the heart and the sincerity of the heart for others. Remember we said ad-deen nasiha in one of the previous hadith. The deen is nasiha, sincerity. Sincerely fulfilling the rights of others. That's nasiha. Sincerely fulfilling the rights of others. And nasihatu lillah, nasiha for Allah and to His Messenger, His book, and so on, means to sincerely fulfill the rights of Allah and His Messenger and the book and the leaders and people in general. So here, what's being said by the Messenger ﷺ is there are three things that help purify the heart of a Muslim and keep it sincere and true in fulfilling its duty. The first is ikhlasul amali lillah, doing actions sincerely for Allah. And that is no doubt the most powerful tool for purifying the heart. And this is why secret acts of ibadah are superior to public and open acts of ibadah in terms of purifying the heart. Maybe not necessarily in terms of their impact, but in terms of purifying the heart, secret acts of ibadah are greater. Secret acts of ibadah are greater. And that's the hard thing to do. Allah Ta'ala help me and you. Because public acts of ibadah, even though they can have a good impact, okay, like sadaqah, big amounts of money, teaching, knowledge, whatever, but there's always a risk of something in the heart. There's always a risk of showing off, there's always a risk of thinking about people being impressed, and that type of thing. So therefore, the first thing mentioned is ikhlasul amali lillah, sincerity. We are far better off working with sincerity than focusing on lots and lots of actions or fancy actions. We are far better off with this. وَمُنَاصَحَةُ وُلَاةِ الْأُمُورِ, and giving sincere advice to leaders, those in charge. وَلُزُومُ جَمَاعَةِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and keeping to the jama'ah of the Muslims. Why does this help purify the heart and keep it true to its duty? Because a lot of the time, because every person is convinced of their own view and their own understanding and their own ideas. So when we sacrifice some of that or compromise some of that for the sake of unity, it means our heart is in the right place, as opposed to wanting everyone to do things my way. You guys don't listen. Watch how this is going to happen to you. Watch how that's going to happen to you. Okay, fine. I have an opinion. But other people are disagreeing with me. Okay, we keep together. We keep together. Maintain the hearts of the believers and keep them together. So, if a person is willing to compromise their own views and their own ideas and their own suggestions for the sake of the jama'ah, that means their heart is in a good place. It means they're giving nasiha to the Muslims. Because unity is greater. Unity is greater. And sometimes being united and making a mistake is better than some of us making the right decision and then that causing disunity. And this has limits, of course. Okay, we're not talking about obvious major sins or clear sins or that type of thing. But we're talking about things where there can be different views, different judgments, different ways of weighing between benefits and harm. I personally don't like something, but most people think it's beneficial. Most people think it's an effective way to get something done. Yallah, bismillah, I'm with you. Okay, normally I'm not, but I'm with people. I'm not going to, cause division between people, because now that becomes a matter of personal ego. It becomes a matter of personal ego. And this is where the problem of the heart is there. And also, he says, مُنَاصَحَةُ وُلَاةِ الْأُمُورِ, giving sincere advice to the leaders. Because if they're guided, then most likely that guides the rest of the community and the rest of society. And this is why I'm amazed at Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, who despite being punished and tortured and imprisoned for years, not even for doing something wrong, but for standing up for what's right, for standing up for the deen, still maintained the principle of not openly challenging and going against authority and fighting them or trying to kill them, which is ajib. Even though these guys were Jahmiyyah, meaning the validity of their Islam is questionable. And many of the A'imma of the past considered the Jahmiyyah to be disbelievers. So Imam Ahmad, in doing so, what does that show? It shows that he is more concerned for the welfare of the wider community of Muslims than he is for getting his personal revenge. Ahmad had rahimahullah, who was one of many scholars who had incredible honesty towards the deen. Radiallahu anhu. And that's shown in many cases, and this being one of them. And that is that he gave priority to the welfare of believers over this issue. And I know that's not an easy thing to do. You think Imam Ahmad's happy that these leaders are spreading falsehood and deviant ideas? For Ahmad, that's worse than allowing alcohol to be drunk. And it is, because corrupting the minds of believers is worse than people committing sins knowing that they're sins. So, yes, Allah tests us. Allah tests us with leaders who are corrupt, who are deviant. Sometimes you question their Islam, sometimes you question their Iman, sometimes you question their loyalty to Muslims. That's fine. And nowhere have we been commanded to love leaders and to praise them and to constantly say good things about them. No, that's not the case. Nor have we been told to never criticize. And the Sahaba used to be very open in criticizing. And who are they criticizing? Other Sahaba. If there's anyone worth being quiet about, it's a companion. And yet the companions had no problem speaking the truth. How many times did Ali ibn Abi Talib openly go against and disagree with Uthman and say that he's wrong? And so did Ibn Mas'ud. And so did a number of companions go against Muawiyah in his opinions. Doesn't mean that, they were willing to divide the believers. And that's why Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was criticizing Uthman for praying 4 rak'ahs in Mina during Hajj, Dhuhr and Asr. He said, I prayed behind the Prophet ﷺ 2 rak'ahs. I'm behind Abu Bakr, I'm behind Umar. And now this guy is praying 4 rak'ahs. And after disagreeing with him and criticizing him for it, he prayed behind him 4 rak'ahs. And he said, al-khilafu shar, because disunity and dispute is not a good thing. I'd rather keep to the jama'ah, even though I openly disagree. And when Uthman ibn Affan said to the Muslims, everyone has to get rid of their mushaf. In fact, he commanded that the masahif be burnt, because disagreement in qira'ah was growing and people weren't understanding that. So Uthman ibn Affan and the rest of the companions agreed to standardize things and to maintain the mushaf that was well known, well established and recited at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in case people started to add to it what's not from it, disagree, not understand the point of difference in qira'at and that type of thing, or difference in ahruf at that time it was called. So Ibn Mas'ud disagreed with Uthman, and he said, don't hand in your masahif to him. And he said, غُلُّ مَصَاحِفَكُمْ وَمَنْ يَغْلُ لِيَأْتِ بِمَا غَلَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. That's what Ibn Mas'ud was saying. He said, take your masahif and keep them and don't hand them in, and you'll meet Allah Ta'ala with your mushaf on the Day of Judgment. So the point is that our relationship with leaders, state leaders and other types of leaders, or the tribal leaders, it doesn't have to be a relationship of total loyalty. Whatever you say, I'll do. What's that? What kind of attitude is that? No one has that attitude who's a true believer. But it's also not an attitude of emotion. These guys are corrupt, start a war and kill 90% of the population. That's also, contradictory to the objective of the Sharia. And that's why the A'imma rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned the issue of our relationship with authority in books of Aqeedah. In books of Aqeedah, even though technically it's not a matter of Aqeedah, it's a fiqhi issue. But they mentioned it there because of its importance and because of the welfare of the wider community. And every circumstance has its way of acting. No.
So this is a problem issue now that we have in some countries where they're opening up to do certain things which we're not used to or not familiar with, or one would say that they shouldn't happen in those lands.
Yes.
So it's just a question of sitting back and just carrying on.
See, that's why I say we have two extremes in this. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited fighting authority physically. قال يا رسول الله أفلا ننابذهم بالسيف? Shouldn't we fight them with the sword? قال لا ما صلوا. So long as the salah is established, the deen is outwardly established, then don't. Because the benefit of that is greater than the benefit of getting rid. Is it beneficial to get rid of corrupt rulers in and of itself? Yeah, it is beneficial, because we always want the best rulers. However, compared to the harm that may come from that, compare that to the benefit of maintaining salah and people praying salah and still going to the masjid and holding on to the deen, that's a problem. However, the Prophet ﷺ is talking about that. As for giving advice, or teaching people the difference between right and wrong, or criticizing wrong practices in the community, we've never heard of a companion say that you're not allowed to do that. And the practice of the Sahaba is very open and very clear about this. In fact, the companions were sometimes strict, even on things which we see minor. And once one of the companions saw the khatib on the minbar making dua and raising his hands, and he openly said, قَبَّحَ اللَّهُ تِلْكَ الْيَدَيْنِ الصُّغَيْرَتَيْنِ. May Allah Ta'ala ruin those two little hands of yours. I saw the Prophet ﷺ on the minbar making dua, and he didn't do more than this. You know, you might think it's not a big deal. Tell you, raising the hands in dua, that's still established in the sunnah too. Okay. So, and it doesn't mean that this companion is necessarily right. Okay, seemingly he's correct, because he's referring this back to the Messenger ﷺ. But it's a point where disagreement is a possibility. And yet, he saw no issue in pointing out a mistake. And the examples are countless in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And these are matters which are not matters of clear halal and haram. So how can someone not speak out against clear halal and haram? And to treat that as a type of khuruj against the authority. Speaking out is not khuruj. Khuruj is a very clear term which is talking about physical opposition to authority. As for speaking out against wrong, telling people, guys, this is happening in our community, everyone, boycott this place, no one go to it, whoever does this is sinful, is committing a major sin, and this and that, boycott these banks that are dealing with riba, don't buy from this store that started to sell alcohol. Obviously circumstances differ. Mecca is not the same as Birmingham. Okay. And so on. Every place has its own ulama that see what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. But the point is, speaking out against wrong is never unacceptable. But what matters is maintaining people's safety and maintaining the jama'ah. Yeah.
You gave the example of Ibn Mas'ud disagreeing with Uthman. Is that an example of disobeying the ruler for something that's not halal or haram?
Like what? Which one?
So as in
the salah one? Or the mushaf?
Is not listening to an order.
It is, yes.
So is that an example of disobeying? Is that okay?
Well, it's an example of disobeying, but it's an example of disobeying the leader due to a religious conviction. Ibn Mas'ud considered that to be wrong, Islamically wrong. He considered Uthman's decision to be wrong. But we say Uthman was correct, because his decision was backed by the rest of the Sahaba. And Ibn Mas'ud was on his own, maybe with a few others. So the truth was with Uthman on this, without doubt. And it's narrated that Ali ibn Abi Talib said, if I was in the position of Uthman, I would have done the same thing. And Uthman and Ali are above Ibn Mas'ud, for sure, in status and also in the obligation to follow them, certainly as khulafa. So yeah, it doesn't mean that every single one-off example becomes a rule for all times. But yeah, it's an example of someone disobeying authority because of religious conviction. And it's a matter of ijtihad. Each person answers to themselves before Allah Ta'ala. Yeah.
slightly maybe an extreme version of this issue of going against rulers.
Yeah.
We have the examples of Hussein against Yazid and various Sahaba as well against Abdullah ibn Zubayr.
Yeah.
So how do we interpret that?
It's a good question. We find throughout the history of Islam examples of arms against authority and things like that. The problem is sometimes, especially in the early days of Islam, authority is not well established straight away. So for example, when Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed radiallahu anhu, who was the authority? For many people it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear. But Muawiyah already had authority in Sham. Already. And had been for a long, long time. So for many people, he was the natural next Khalifa. And for other people, the rightful Khalifa was who? Al-Hasan ibn Ali. Okay, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, if the army of Al-Hasan, and this didn't happen, but if the army of Al-Hasan was to go to war with the army of Muawiyah, it's hard to say this is going against authority, because where is the established authority? These guys don't recognize that authority. This is a whole nation, a whole community, a whole city, a state that doesn't establish that, recognize that authority. So it's a bit difficult in circumstances like that. And even assuming, and by the way, what did Al-Hasan do in this case? He stepped down, right? He stepped down to Muawiyah, and Muawiyah became the established Khalifa for a long time. And Islam was very, very successful at his time, because of the clearly established authority eventually, and he ruled for many years, radiallahu anhu. After Muawiyah died, he handed authority to his son. Who's the established Khalifa now? His son, Yazid. That's right. So in this case, we do have examples of going against established authority. And that does not change the fact that we have established principles in the Sunnah that clarify when it's permissible and not permissible to go against authority. If a companion made ijtihad and felt that that doesn't apply in this case, or in this particular instance, this is not a worthy authority or a recognized authority, that's their ijtihad. But we have no choice but to refer things back to the texts. And the texts establish a qa'idah. And not one hadith, or 2, or 5, or 10, but many ahadith establishing the rule of authority. The authority should be followed because of the maslahah of the wider Muslims. Does that mean that at the time of Muawiyah, was Muawiyah the best companion at his time necessarily? There were better companions than him. Ibn Umar is greater than Muawiyah. Ibn Umar is greater than Muawiyah. And so is Aisha. And so are a number of other companions who became Muslim before him and were more known for their knowledge, more known for spreading Islam, more known for their... So being in charge or being in authority doesn't necessarily mean that this is the greatest person. Was Yazid ibn Muawiyah the greatest person alive at the time when he was handed over authority? No. It just happened, Allah's qadar, that Muawiyah decided that that was an appropriate thing to do. He felt that his son had learned a lot from his dad, and therefore he has an idea of how to run a state and this and that. I think he'd be a suitable authority. Does everyone have to agree with him on that? No. Maybe he wasn't that suitable. He's not a companion either way. So the point is that what eventually some of the Sahaba did in relation to Yazid, did that bring about greater harm or greater good? Greater harm. No, put emotions to the side. That's a reality. Brought about greater harm. And that's why, like I said, the ulama of the Salaf are in agreement that our relationship with authority is a matter worthy of being discussed in books of Aqeedah. Something that every Muslim should be aware of. And again, that doesn't lead us to the extreme of absolute obedience in right and wrong. It doesn't lead us to the extreme of praising unworthy leaders unnecessarily. And it doesn't lead us to the extreme of not speaking out against wrong. Wallahu a'lam.
I don't understand. So some rulers are doing things that you might see is not right, or scholars are being put in prison and stuff like
Yes.
that. Is it permissible for the average Muslim
No.
to actually speak against this, or say that what they're doing is wrong, or when countries are trying to normalize ties or going against principles of starting to sell alcohol, whatever it is it permissible for the average person to actually speak against this?
Yes. Yes. And I don't know of a strong argument for not being allowed to speak out against wrong. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Whoever sees an evil should change it with their hand. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. And if they can't, then with their mouth. Now, being silent against wrongs for a long time eventually leads people to accepting those wrongs. So doesn't it become our responsibility to at least say, this is wrong, this is haram, this is dhulm? Yes, for sure. Whilst keeping in mind the maslahah of people, of the Muslims in general. So absolutely, there is nothing at all to say that you can't do that. There's nothing at all to say you can't do that. And speaking out against wrong doesn't just have to be face to face to the authorities. Speaking out against wrong can be in a class with people. And that's exactly what Abu Sa'id al-Khudri did when Muawiyah radiallahu anh suggested that Zakat al-Fitr, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam legislated sa'an min tamr, a sa' of dates or raisins and other things as well. So Muawiyah said, I think that bur, because of its value, can be given in Zakat al-Fitr half of the normal quantity because of its value. Okay? Nisfu sa'. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri used to criticize him for that and say, we used to give Zakat al-Fitr like this in the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, until so-and-so came and gave us his own opinion. Now, that's not directly, speaking to authority face to face, but it's clarifying something he believed to be wrong. So there's no harm in clarifying wrong. But also, that shouldn't lead to unnecessary and excessive, talk or slander or exaggerating. Sometimes we have a bad opinion of a leader, so we're quick to spread everything that we hear about them. That's also not right and unnecessary. It doesn't help the case either. And we also don't want to think badly of ulama who have taken certain stances. We don't want to be quick to jump to conclusions, because we're in a comfortable position. We're at home, alhamdulillah, we don't have great responsibility and so on. Some ulama might think, I have great responsibility. I can't speak out against all the wrongs of this authority, but I can at least be somewhat close and give some advice. At least say something. That's something we have amongst the Salaf. Throughout history, some ulama kept a big distance between themselves and authority. They considered it to be a fitna. Sufyan al-Thawri is one of them, Imam Ahmad is one of them. And other ulama weren't like that. Az-Zuhri used to visit authority and speak to them and give advice to them. And so did Ishaq ibn Rahawayh and other people. So, husn al-dhan is important, and if someone is exaggerating or going over the top or doing wrong, we speak out against wrong, but with knowledge, not with emotion. Wallahu a'lam. طيب. Let's continue with our last two hadith. He says, عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الناس كالإبل المئة لا تكاد تجد فيها راحلة متفق عليه. Here the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام is talking about how exceptional people and excellence is little. That's obvious, that's well known. Okay, so he's saying here that people are like rare camels. Okay, from 100 or so camels, you'll only find one that's exceptional. People are like that. لا تكاد تجد فيها راحلة. How have they translated? Who's got a translation?
Mankind are but like 100 camels. Out of them you will not get close to finding one to ride.
Okay, so the idea behind it is that, excellence is few, excellence is little in people. And this hadith is obviously a khabar, it's a statement describing reality, but it's also a type of command as well. And that command, number one, is to not have unrealistic expectations of every person. Yeah, not to have unrealistic expectations of every person, because when we do that, we lose hope. And what we've just been talking about authority is an example of that. Sometimes we have high expectations of authority. Authorities today are imprisoning ulama, right? In Muslim countries. Is that happening or not?
Yeah.
Is that a wrong or is that a right?
Right.
It's a right. It's a dhulm. It's wrong. It's an evil. It's right in terms of it's happening. You're brave, mashallah. Come against all of you. Yes, that's right. No, I know what you meant. So, it's a dhulm that's happening. We just said Imam Ahmad was imprisoned and tortured. It's not a new thing. Does that mean we should be happy with wrong that's happening? No, but we also don't want to lose hope. And think that this is the worst thing that's ever happened and there's no more hope. No. Imam Ahmad was imprisoned and ulama was still teaching knowledge, and ulama was still delivering the khutbah and answering people's questions and praying salah in jama'ah, and the adhan was still... So, does that mean that this is an acceptable thing? No, it had a huge impact on the Muslims, particularly in Baghdad at that time, for sure. But also, this hadith gives us a teaching to be realistic about people's capabilities, about our own capabilities as well, so that we don't lose hope. And it's also a command, as the author rahimahullah says in his commentary, it's a command to raise amongst us people who are excellent. Because there can be people who are excellent. If we have a whole community of millions and we don't find a single person who excels, that's a problem too. 100 Sharia graduates, not a single alim, that means there's a problem. Okay? 1,000 sometimes Sharia graduates from Islamic universities and so on, not a single scholar, not a single reformer, not a single person who is putting their effort into really reforming their community and educating and teaching. That means there's something wrong. There's something wrong with us. We're not doing enough to bring about those people who excel. And it's good that the author rahimahullah did that, because we want this attitude of reading a hadith that seem like just factual statements. It seems like just a statement describing a reality. But we should pay attention to the commands that are involved in it as well. Wallahu a'lam. And that brings us to the final hadith. May Allah Ta'ala make our ending in this life good and khair and barakah upon Iman and Islam. He says الحديث التاسع والتسعون عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأتي على الناس زمان القابض على دينه كالقابض على الجمر رواه الترمذي. Again, a statement, but it contains a command. That statement is that a time will come in which the one who clings onto his religion is like the one holding on to hot coal, clinging onto hot coal. Which means what? It's going to be hard. It means they're going to have struggles. It means they're going to have temptation to let go. It means there's going to be times where they might have to let go a little bit, and so on. That's where the analogy is. And subhanAllah, the interesting thing is that throughout history, ulama have claimed that this hadith is applicable to their time. 1200 years ago, ulama said, this is our time now. And every single generation is saying the same thing about theirs. This is a reality that Muslims are definitely going to face, and it could be that we are facing it in many places for sure. Because if a Muslim who practices his religion feels like a stranger in Muslim lands, sometimes that's a problem. That means that could be a description of what's mentioned in this hadith. But it's also a command, and that command is to not be too bothered about what the majority of people are doing. Not to be too bothered about people. Time is short, life is short, our life could end at any time. So if we're constantly going to be influenced by what others around us are doing, then we will be from the many who are just followers, not from the few who maybe have to struggle a little bit. Maybe you're given the odd look, or strange look sometimes, but that's the case. I've heard of people from Europe going to Muslim countries and people view them as strange. Maybe a woman lives in Europe and she wears the niqab, or a man lives in Europe and has a beard and prays salah in the masjid on a regular basis, or doesn't do certain things that are, culturally acceptable but haram. Like physical touching and greeting non-mahrams and that type of thing. So I looked at it as strange. What the heck's wrong with you? You live in Holland? You live in England? So sometimes a person has to put up with that type of look, that type of reaction, and that's that. But the reward is proportional to suffering. The more a person struggles, the greater their reward. That's a well-established qa'idah in the Sharia. Wallahu a'lam. Sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. May Allah Ta'ala raise the rank of the author, rahimahullah Ta'ala, because he really did a great job in summarizing the key teachings of the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And I think we have seen, Jazakumullah khair first of all for your attendance. Many or most of you were consistently attending, and that's not an easy thing to do, even though sometimes we took breaks and had a week off, 2 weeks off, or that type of thing. Jazakumullah khair. And that's inshallah you benefited, but more importantly you benefited me as well with your attendance. Number one, with questions and contributions, and also motivation. I see, I'm not talking to myself, then that's a motivator. But I think we saw that we didn't really study 99 ahadith. We actually studied maybe close to 1,000 ahadith, because every hadith had extra ahadith which which acted as commentary for those ahadith. And that's why it's important to not be too concerned about lots of knowledge, but rather perfecting knowledge. Taking a book or a few books, even if they're small, and trying to revise and trying to study and trying to memorize. And I also want to thank and push Muhammad and Muhammad, who have done an acceptable job in memorizing, and they're close to completing the book, inshallah, maybe 20 hadith or so, and that's a good thing. And hopefully that can be a continual thing, and more of us trying to memorize and revise, because knowledge that is memorized sticks. Many of you, I know, you've been in the masjid for a long time, attending classes for a long time, but true knowledge is the one that sticks. We can either go the long route, and that is attending tens of thousands of classes before information starts to settle, or outside of class we can spend a bit of time on our own, reading, revising, trying to memorize here and there, reading with our families too, and so on. Wallahu a'lam. Any comments before we discuss what we are going to do next lesson? Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan.
Wa iyyakum.
Jazakallah khairan. I was going to say, what's the next book?
That was a question raised before, and I've given it some thought, and I said to some brothers 2 weeks ago, I'll present it here and see what people think. We either have the option of studying a larger text in hadith, which is Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam is about 400 hadith, which summarizes most of the ahkam of Sharia, most of the legal rulings. All of the ahadith are in Bukhari and Muslim, or one of them. And they're comprehensive and usually concise ahadith. The way we go through that book is by obviously commenting on the hadith and its meaning, and touching upon scholarly differences on how to understand that hadith and apply that hadith. That scholarly difference is not going to be too comprehensive because that will be never ending, but it will touch upon some of the reasons why scholars differ on fiqh issues. So we will be starting with the book of Tahara, and then Salah, and then Zakat, and then fasting, and then Hajj. However, because of Ramadan approaching, we may bring the book of fasting forward, start with the book of fasting, or jump to the book of fasting after a week or two, and then continue, after that with normal routine. So that's one option. The other option is to study a text in a different science, like Usul al-Fiqh, al-Waraqat, for example, by al-Jawami, which is a simple summary of the principles of fiqh, and where fiqh comes from. The other option is to study a text in Aqidah, like al-Tahawiyya, or al-Wasitiyya, or Lum'at al-I'tiqad by Ibn Qudama, or even something shorter, like a poem by Ibn Abi Dawood, the son of Abu Dawood al-Sijistani, one of the great imams of hadith as well. Some scholars say he's as great as his father in knowledge, so that's an option as well. Or the science of hadith, like Nukhbat al-Fikr, and that's more about how scholars authenticate and how hadith are sort of transmitted and so on. So we've got several options, and I don't know if people have been benefiting and enjoying the routine of regularly choosing several hadith. Maybe Umdat al-Ahkam is a good choice. It's a natural next step from this book. But like I said, I don't have too much of an issue. I know we're probably not going to come to an agreement here, so maybe I'll have to go home. But I thought at least if someone has a suggestion or comment, we can hear it here. If there's a sense of a majority, preference, we'll go with that. To keep to the Jama'ah. Yeah. Salam.
For your time that you've put in with us. 2 points. One, suggestion that whatever you choose to continue, let's continue and not have a break.
Yes.
Inshallah. And the suggestion of looking at fasting before Ramadan, I think is good for everybody as well, inshallah. The suggestion that, there's less of a burden for you as well, is sometimes if you have to travel or something, is it just an idea to have a second person supporting you? Because if you do the 400 hadith, it is a long
it's going to take time. Yes,
it's a program and an effort. So it's happy to have you every week. Not that we don't want you every week, but just like for a backup for yourself to find somebody to bounce off.
So the classes are not cut off.
That's just a suggestion or an idea. And the second question was, which is a question, is when you read Imam Nawawi's 40 hadith and so on, the first hadith is often explained about why the hadith was chosen and so on, about the intention and action.
Yes.
This last hadith, can you signal us anything else why this hadith was chosen?
What's the last one?
Many other reasons you could, and different hadith could have been chosen about seeking knowledge or love of Allah and so on.
Right.
But specifically this hadith in relation to that subject about holding on, we hear the hadith of holding on to your religion by your mawlas and so on. So why?
It's a good question. Can anyone suggest why maybe the author chose this hadith to be the last one?
So that we should strive after, for example, after we went through that book,
Jamil.
that we should strive to be steadfast and to continue.
Good. That seems to be the reason, that the author, it's almost like the author is saying, now that you have a good summary of Islam, now that you have understood some of the main ahkam of the Sharia, now that you've understood close to 100 ahadith, and hopefully studied them and implemented them, now make sure you stick to them. Now make sure you stick to them and cling to them tightly, because this is prophetic guidance, unlike, man-made guidance. So that seems to be, a good.
And it won't be easy.
And it won't be easy. Good. Don't think that by reading them you've done the job. Living by them is the harder part. So it seems to be that's why the author chose that. Allahu a'lam. Who else has a
So just what Bilal said about trying to make sure that we carry this on. So we would want to have a lesson next week.
Yes.
So that means we have to decide something today, right?
Or within the week, yes.
Otherwise, how do we communicate? We'll always communicate for
Nah.
yourself. I mean, you mentioned the natural progression based on the hadith as well, that we need to really keep going with seeking knowledge, etc.
Yeah.
And I mentioned as well about Ramadan coming up soon. Yourself mentioned that it's a natural progression going on to this book.
Does that so what we can do is take the chapter of fasting from Umdat al-Ahkam to begin with over the next few weeks, because from what I remember there is at least about 30 ahadith. So the pace that we're going at is about 3 to 4 ahadith a week, at most 5. So if we do that, we only have just over a month, don't we, until Ramadan. So is it a good suggestion to start from next week, the chapter of fasting from Umdat al-Ahkam? طيب خلاص إن شاء الله تعالى. So it seems like we'll go down that direction, and once Ramadan is closer we'll decide what to do during Ramadan, because it's a different routine for everyone. But maybe Umdat al-Ahkam is a good choice. The book has been translated, but I don't think it's as easily available online as a translation. But the book is very widely available, of course, and there are translated physical copies available too. I've got a small one at home. So inshallah ta'ala we'll maybe go with Umdat al-Ahkam then. It's a good progression, and the good thing about it is that it's a mix of hadith and fiqh. A good mix of hadith and fiqh, as well as we'll try to add in other things as well, inshallah ta'ala as well.
Just building off what this brother said about everybody communicating, is it a good idea maybe to get a group chat made or anything?
Possibly. Do you guys get regular updates from the masjid?
Yes.
Some of you, yeah?
Yeah.
A lot of you not. Who doesn't?
Is that broken?
Who doesn't get updates when there's a class on or not on? Okay, so yeah, that's.
Okay, so next week what I'll do is I'll bring a pen, I'll take everybody's number down, I'll put you onto the masjid group.
Sorry, why don't you just make a WhatsApp group right now and everyone can scan your QR code?
Yeah, there is already a group. There's already a group that
For the masjid?
For the masjid.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean
You're talking about one for the classes specifically.
Yes, one for this class, and
Yeah.
then everyone can just scan the
Okay.
QR code right now.
I don't know how to do that. And,
No,
Okay.
we'll help you.
طيب خلاص. So
just the cameraman.
طيب خير. We've decided that inshallah, next week we'll go with Umdat al-Ahkam, and then we'll work on a group as well, make communication easy as well. Yeah.
In the long run, what is the best way then? Like you see on the account, then we got Raqat and different sciences,
Yes.
like mass schedule, as in for the long term, of seeking knowledge, like since
I'll make this the last thing I say for today, inshallah, and this is a rule that endless number of scholars have mentioned. Taking one book and studying with a teacher, regardless of where that is, and focusing on that book in every single science. So we have hadith, we have nahu and sarf, we have ulum al-hadith, we have fiqh, we have usul al-fiqh, and so on. You take one text in each of these sciences and you perfect that text without going off topic too much. Then you will find yourself inclining towards one thing over the other. You like hadith more, or you like fiqh more, you like usul more. Now you delve into a specific science while still keeping in touch with those other sciences. But the key thing is sticking to one text that is comprehensive and studying it properly and revising it and ideally memorizing it. And number 2, having a competent teacher to teach that text. فما حاول الغاية في 1000 سنة شخص فخذ من كل فن أحسنه بحفظ متن جامع للراجح تأخذه على مفيد الناصح. You're never going to attain all knowledge, he says in ألفية السند. So خذ من كل فن أحسنه, take a good text, a good portion from every science. By memorizing a comprehensive text, تأخذه على مفيد الناصح, studying it with a competent teacher. So my advice, if you can focus on Umdat al-Ahkam and try to memorize it. It's only a few ahadith a week, it's not hard. We're fortunate that we're not cramming it into 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's an opportunity. And it will be a shortcut in the long term. It will be a shortcut in the long term. Because 90% of questions that I get, or some of you get, or anyone gets about halal and haram, 90% of those questions go back to Umdat al-Ahkam. 400 to 500 ahadith summarizing the halal and haram. They really are. And Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah says, Ahadith al-Ahkam 500. All the ahadith that summarize the ahkam are 500. And that's basically Umdat al-Ahkam with maybe Arba'in al-Nawawiyya or a book like this. Wallahu a'lam. Barakallahu feekum.